All right, Magic Makers. I have a wonderful woman here. Her name is Lindsey Heiserman. And what I really like about her is that her podcast is called Mind, Muscle, Movement. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I got to dive a little deeper into this because I find it just so fascinating because so many of us think about how hard we have to go and that it's not about the form, that it's all about like, here's what I used to be able to do and this is what I can't do anymore. We're always chasing something. And when I saw this podcast name and I listened to a bunch of podcasts, I was like, oh, this girl needs to get on the show. So I did it. I got her. She's sitting right here with us. So welcome to the show, Lindsey.
Oh, I'm so excited. When I got your email, I was like, yes, let's talk about all of these things. So let's have a great conversation.
So, when I always love how like I think it's rare that you find a person in fitness who does like, woke up and said, this is my career. And so, I'm assuming you're like me, that I had a different path before I joined this path. So you were in social work, mental health work, and then what made you make that like turn towards fitness?
Interestingly enough, it was the other way around. So I
Ah,
actually did wake up. I did wake up and say fitness is for me. And I got an exercise science undergraduate degree, and I just knew I was like, fitness is the way. Moving my body was so instrumental for me. And at the time, I didn't really know. I was like, what do personal trainers do? Like, I don't have a clue, but it was like the only job I knew to have. This was in the early 2000s, and there weren't trainers online. It was
yeah.
like you were going to do corporate fitness or personal training in a health club. And I was like, well, I don't know, but I have education, I have passion, so we'll go into fitness. And after a couple years of training with clients, I really realized that the thing I loved the most and the key was the mental health aspect. And so I was like, well, am I going to be a trainer forever? I'm not really sure. So I went back to school and got a graduate degree in counseling. And I was like, maybe I'll be a therapist. This seems like maybe it would make sense. And then I didn't like that. I
Yeah.
thought that's the actual way. So now I put both things together, a lot of in-depth behavior coaching and life coaching, plus the movement and the personal training together. So to me, it's a full package. Everybody needs help with both.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, I came from the business world and I just worked 100% corporate. And so when I became a personal trainer, it was more like the way they train you, they're going to, you're thinking how many bicep curls should you do and how many
Yeah.
squats. And the conversations that I was having with my clients is more about how do I fit this in? How do I go out to a work dinner and not be the girl with a bag of carrots? And so it's really interesting that you saw that too, that it wasn't just the physical moving of your body, which is great. It was all the like life pieces that we had to kind of Jenga our way into.
Yep. Yep. And I always said when I worked with clients early in my career too, I said, I want you to feel better when you leave, physically,
Yes.
mentally, emotionally. Like you're going to come here, you're going to move, and you're just going to feel better. Can you lift more weights? Maybe. But my goal with clients had always been that mental, emotional first.
Mm.
And then what are you accomplishing, with your body?
Yeah, no, and I like that because I deal with mostly women over 40, and our messaging, when I always say we were like the bleeding edge of this fitness revolution, and it was always like drilled into our head: no pain, no gain. Right? If I wasn't
Mhm.
bleeding from the eye after a workout, could barely wash my hair, did I even do anything? And now it's like trying to get those women to be like, girl, we can't move like that anymore. Like, in my 20s, I could go to the gym for 2, 3 hours at a time. One, I have no desire. Two, my body's like, girlfriend, like, what are you thinking?
Okay, I have so many things to say about this specific thing because I feel like I'm living two lives. My
Mhm.
20 to 40-year-old self. I mean, I endurance racing. I was at the gym for hours. I would do 24-hour competitions. I could just like beat it through. And
Right.
I loved it. I was like, this is my life. I'm not a professional athlete, but like I compete. I feel
Right.
really great
I'm
about this.
superhuman.
Yes. And literally I turned 40 and my body was like, "No, ma'am. No."
Turn in your cape.
It actually Oh, it started a couple years before that, but what's so funny, I've had a couple of knee surgeries and my body truly was like, "You cannot. This is
Yeah.
not how you're gonna do this for the rest of your life." And I fought it for a couple of years where I was like, "No, I want the intensity. I
Yes.
crave the intensity." Now, I'm like, "Can I just go to the gym and lift the weights and, like, walk and sleep?" And I don't know how my brain changed, but if you tune into your body, it will tell you what you I don't wanna say should or could, but I never thought I would be this person.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because, I was the same way. I was like, go, 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 go. And as people are like in the spots where we both were, that you're in that like one camp is like go, 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 and one foot's like, ugh, I can't go, go, go. And it's like, it's trying to tell people like, I don't know what the day was. Like I can't describe that it was a Tuesday, June 10th. I can't say that. But at some point, your mind and your body kind of like came came to like some type of like detente. Like they both like realized
Mhm.
like we can't keep fighting each other or because someone's gonna lose.
Yeah, yeah, and I think some of it is at least for me, I don't wanna speak for everyone else, but intense exercise was a coping skill
Yes.
in most of my 20s and my 30s, right? It was the way I could and I learned this in my teens, I could manage my emotions through intense
Mm,
exercise
yep.
or over exercising. And that does last until your body can't do it anymore. And for me, my body, and also I think the COVID time where you couldn't go to the gym and I adapted my workouts and then I had these injuries. And after that sort of flux of a few years, my body was like, you got to do something different. And I also had to really cope with some major life things that exercise was not solving in terms of coping.
Yes.
And so I think that happens for a lot of people. You get into your late 30s, early 40s, and you do need to deal with some stuff. And exercise can manage it for a while, but it still follows you around.
You know what? You right there hit the nail on the head. And so many my first coaching business was I coached girls who did fitness competitions, and that's what I did for years. And for me, I think about why I started my fitness competition. I hated my job. And it gave me an
Mhm.
escape from my job. I hated my job, and it just gave me something to do other than be like how think about how miserable I was in my job. And as I kind of
Yep.
as you say that and I kind of reflect on, my years of coaching, I think of the girls who had unhappy marriages or had unhappy lives. And, this competition was the thing that was going to make them happy. And I'm sure in your therapy world, you could, there's so many like things to unpack when it comes to like this chasing happiness. And I think it's women, we're sold that if I get married, I'm going to be happy. I have babies, I'm going to be happy. I get the good job, the house, the this. And there's so many like when A, B, or C happens, happiness will just like ring my doorbell. And it never seems to happen. I mean, if it has happened for someone listening, holla, we want to hear about it.
That's right. That's right. I don't know. And there's just also, I've been talking a lot about perimenopause, as I'm sure you have,
Yeah.
as we are surrounded by women. And it's really a hot topic these days, which I really appreciate. And what I talked about the other day with some clients is it happens also at a time in which life is very busy. You've got
Yes.
your 20s and 30s, and they were their own thing, for
Mhm.
most of us. Like you kind of bucket 20 to 40. And then when you get 40 plus, if you have kids, they're probably teenagers or
Right.
they're going out of the house. If you don't have kids, you probably have a career just like those
Mm.
who may have kids. You have a house, you have aging parents, which is
Yep.
what's been my biggest stressor. And it all happens at the same time. And
Yeah.
so trying to exercise to manage all that stress. It's like it just got to be too much. And then my body was like, the exercise is now in the stress category. Could you figure
Right.
this out? And that's the puzzle I think we, especially as women, have to figure out as we get older.
Yeah. You're right. Cause it's like, I think also, we talk about perimenopause, we don't have the progesterone that is coursing through our body in that regular interval that it used to. And it's the progesterone that gives us that resilience and teaching us how to be resilient is not something that, like, there's not a course. There's no like resilience
No.
101 out there. And because I was able to get through 20 years of going to the gym and beating the shit out of myself, like you said, I never had to really understand that it was a coping mechanism. It was just, it
Mhm.
became my identity, something that I did. You know,
Mhm.
you were an endurance racer. I was a fitness competitor. You know, whatever your thing is, even if you just go to the gym and you do yoga, like you're a yogi and that's your
Yep.
identity. But as your body starts to say girlfriend, or your life starts to say, you can't go to the 4 hour yoga class anymore because, you know, kids need to be carted around, or you need to go sit on a baseball field. It starts to like chip away at you a little bit.
Mhm. And the thing that you just said about identity, that was honestly the hardest thing for me that
Yes.
I clung onto so much was,
Yes.
but this is what I do.
Mm.
This is what I do. And I thought the other day I was really thinking a lot about this and I was like, but what if it's just not now? Like what if you're a new something?
And
That's
that's
cool
hard.
too. I've It's so hard, but I've tried to think of a lot of things with curiosity these days. Like what
Yeah.
if What if that was what you did now, but what if you became a master swimmer? Or what if you became a better weightlifter? Or what if you, I don't know, like there can be another thing, but we get so stuck on the thing that we've done for so long. And I liked it. I really liked it. But my body will not do that anymore. So I can be mad and I can fight it, or I can be curious about what could be next for me. It's still really hard though.
You know, it's so funny, you know, that also opened up a bunch of conversations that I've had recently. You know, a lot of the women who come to me, you know, we used to be able to like do whatever the hell we wanted to do. Like if I wanted to lose 10 pounds, it wasn't a like chore to lose 10 pounds. Now it feels like I'm climbing Everest to lose 10 pounds. And
That's right.
now, you know, the question now becomes being curious. You know, it's like what I did to lose the 10 pounds when I was 30, my body's like, girl, ha ha ha. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
that's a
You're so
joke.
cute. You're so cute. And you know, the question that I always have to my clients is like, are you willing to be curious? Because right
Mhm.
now, like I don't know what your body's going to respond to. So we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to go really slow because I need to understand what your body's doing. But like you said, you're stuck in the, I'm an endurance racer, so like, why can't I row, you know, 500 meters and then go out for a 40-mile bike ride? I'm like, can we just do a bike ride on the road? And you're like,
Exactly.
but I want to do both. And I'm like, let's just get curious. Like, what would it feel like if you did one or the other?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
And
it's so hard.
what's funny too is I don't know about you because if you came from a fitness competitor background, you're used to the, heavy lifting and the body recomposition and that stuff. My life was a lot of like, let's do it. I'll liken it to CrossFit. I didn't do CrossFit, but similar, right? Like, let's do this intensity. Let's have these EMOMs. Then let's also go for a run and let's also go to the ninja gym and let's also do this. And it was
Yeah.
always all these.
Yeah.
And honestly, now I'm like, one of those is fine for today.
Right. And it's funny because you know, yes, like it was like I needed to do a specific, you know, amount of time lifting. But then on top of that, I would be like, I need to do an hour of cardio. And then on top of that,
Mhm.
it's like, well, I need flexibility. So I also need to go to yoga. Like, so it's just like there's always this comma and, comma and, comma and. There was no or, there was no but. It was
Mhm.
and. I look back and I'm like, where did I have this goddamn time? Like I just
Oh,
like
that too.
I'm like floored about like how stacked my day was
Huh?
that I'm
Huh?
like mind blown. Like if you asked me today to download the schedule I had when I was 35, I'd be like, dude, I'm full.
I know. I know. I know. I know. And the other thing I was thinking about is that pace of life that you just said where there's a way I think that we just that pace and that cramming of everything together just helped me to avoid other things, dealing with other
Yes.
things, facing
Mm-hmm.
and you just at some point, what's that quote? Wherever you go, there you are. Like you're still with yourself, whether you're at the gym or you're not. And at some point in your life, it might be when you're older than 40, but for many, it seems to be 40-ish. you've just got to find a new way. And you also have to deal with your stuff, whether that means you go to therapy, whether that means
Right.
you meditate, whether that means you go for longer walks, slower walks in nature, or, just there are other things that you realize could also be beneficial that's not intense exercise or hours in the gym.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, for those people who are listening here, both of us kind of, even though we had separate fitness tracks, we both kind of came to this conclusion that the way I have been in the world for decades was no longer serving me. And I wish I could tell you that there's going to be this like rainbow that you're going to see or some type of sign that you're going to see, but one day you're just going to hit that like it's a horrible acronym. And if someone come with a better one, it's kind of like those people who like one day just realize like I can no longer drink anymore. Like it's just like this is no longer good for my life, and that's gonna come for you. And I wish I could like guide you to it. I keep always asking like people like Lindsay, anyone I encounter who is on the other side, like if they had that epiphany moment, and you don't like just one day you're like you're at the gym and you're like, you know what? Do I need to do, the rowing machine today? I've been here an hour. I'm good. And you start to get more comfortable that it's okay to leave after an hour. It's okay that like you didn't go 2 days in a row. It's okay that like it's now 3 days a week versus 7 days a week. And it's just this
Mhm.
slow process of like unwinding your identity around what it should look like versus how it actually feels. And
Mhm.
that's individual.
What helped me, I think, when I try to think back is, Instagram feeds you things good and bad, right?
Right,
Like
right.
sometimes you're like, how did I get in this corner of the internet? And other times you think, well, this is a cool corner of the internet. Let me go over here. And I
Yeah.
actually found a handful of women who are 45 plus or even 50 plus who were saying some of these things that I think I was starting to experience, which was that kind of stuff doesn't feel good in my body
Yeah.
anymore. And they had similar backgrounds, right? They had endurance racing, they had CrossFit, they had all these things that I was like, oh, yeah, I've been doing those things too, but maybe you're right. Like maybe I don't actually feel that great. And they were showcasing the importance of doing your heavier lifting, which I'm a trainer, I know, but for some reason, even I need
Mm,
reminded that as I'm getting older, and I want to be fit for the rest of my life,
right, right.
building muscle and heart health are really that's it. Like I need to be strong. And if beating my body up was awesome then, I don't think that's going to help me get to 90 years old and still mobile per the two knee surgeries I had. My body did not like that. So, sometimes it takes hearing these conversations like we're having, seeing people talk about it on the internet,
Yes.
listening to more things that are like, pay attention to your body. That's how I think you can do it because I remember not that long ago telling my friend, I just want to do a really hard EMOM with squats and lunges and I want it to be really hard. And then like 2 days later, I was like, no, I don't
Right.
actually.
Right. You're like, who was that person?
It happened real fast. It happened real fast once I had processed some of the thoughts, I think. And that's not to say that I'm not going to do an intense something. I still think you should get your heart rate up, whatever that looks like, right? Like for heart health, you should move your heart rate some ways. But in terms of being so rough and hard going in the gym day after day after day, that part of me has moved on a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think the two words that come to mind, like, again, it's the curiosity. Like, what am I chasing? Like, what exactly am I chasing? Because if I'm chasing the ghost of Kim Pass or the ghost of Lindsay Pass, you know, my body has shifted. Can I ever be what I was years ago? Probably not. But what am I curious about? What would my new definition of fitness be? Right? Like so
Yep.
making this up, I'm not a runner. Hey, if I can't run a mile in 10 minutes anymore, but I can run a mile in 12 minutes, like who's actually outside timing me? Like is there a prize? Is there a prize when I'm running down my street? Like, is there like someone in their kitchen with the stopwatch timing me? Is someone looking at my
Can
weight?
you imagine?
Oh my God. Is there someone like I'm at the gym? Is there someone who's like, girl, I saw you grab the 45s last week. So what's the deal? Like, there's no one judging me but me. And if I just gave myself the courage to say, you know what, today's not the day. Maybe tomorrow I got a
Mhm.
heavy lift in me, but today I'm just motion, right? Like just getting the reps underneath my belt. And maybe tomorrow is a
Yep.
PR day versus
Yep.
what you mentioned. How many times if you showed up at the gym and you're like, I'm not feeling it today, but I'm gonna push through. And it's like
Mhm.
those days of pushing through are in the rear view.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that longevity mindset of I
Yeah.
do want to be able to do it forever has helped me a lot where I'm like, not every day is a PR. Not every day is the best lift I've ever had or the best run. But I also go to Planet Fitness now, which is funny. I worked in a big, big corporate
Yeah,
gym for
yeah,
a
yeah.
long time where a lot of people were young, and that was cool. I was young then too. And there's something about this little Planet Fitness down the road that all ages of people are there. And the other day I looked around and I think I was one of the youngest people. And a lot of white-haired people were there and my heart was so happy. And that's another thing
Yes.
about what's your environment, right? Because now I'm in the gym with these people who are they're not working super hard, but they are there all the
Right,
time.
exactly.
They are 75, they are 80, and they are still at the gym, walking on the treadmill, lifting their weight machines, and I want to be that.
Yeah,
And I've
exactly.
started to connect that I don't think I can keep doing what I'm doing and still be that old person.
It's
It's
funny.
gotta
I
become different.
I still teach group fitness classes in person, and I recently got off a plane and I'm walking up the jet bridge, and there were probably about 10 wheelchairs lined up. And so I'm in class and we're doing workout. I'm like, when was the last time anyone has increased their weight? And they're like, looked at me like, oh, Kim again with you and the weights. And I said, well, I'm just going to give you a practical story. I said, I just got off a plane and there were 10 wheelchairs lined up. So who here wants to be that person who needs a wheelchair to get from the gate to the plane, so on and so forth? Okay. So
Mhm.
now we're going to really focus on lifting weights. I'm like, I'm not talking like, I'm not asking you to try to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just saying, when you get to 80 plus, do you want to be able to get in and out of your car? Do you want to be able to lift a gallon of milk? Do you want to get off the toilet? Those are the things
Mhm.
that have to go through your mind right now. And let me just tell you, you're not 8 pounds. So with the 8 pound weight, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah. You'll so appreciate this. I still have some group, personal training classes as well, and I started talking about this. I was like, "I don't even care if they think this is weird," because all my clients are 50 plus. Like, not they're all and in fact, most of them are 60 plus. And so I'm like, every time we squat, every time we lunge, every time we bridge, and I say it all the time. You want to get up and down off the toilet, I promise you. And that is a squat. And I said, losing your ability, because my dad had a stroke 2 years ago and he lost all, and he's in a wheelchair. He's lost all ability to help himself up, down, and around. And I said, "You don't know when that could be taken away, and you need to have that strength." Same thing. They laugh because I do a lot of classes where I'm like, "Okay, our circuit involves going down to the floor and back up and down and back up." And they have to get up and down between every exercise. And they're like, "Why did we do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You want to get off the floor when you're 75? Let's
Oh yeah.
practice." And I'm very blunt anymore about it. I'm like, "This is long-term strength.
Yeah.
It has serious implications.
Yeah.
Serious implications."
And I think, so many people think it's like down the road a piece. And I just like, I'm like, in my mind, I don't think I'm the age I am, but I'm
Right.
looking forward and I see what my parents look like. I see like, they live in an active adult community and I see the people in their active adult community. It's a very like black and white line, the people who are active and the people who
Yep.
aren't. And
Mhm.
I just like say, I'm like, I want to be that active person. I want to be 80 years old and still not needing some type of apparatus to walk around with. And so, if that means have to lift just a little less so that I'm not banged up, like I spent most of my life all banged up by pushing through the pain, then that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that also helps people, I think, when you start really, again, it's an example of if you want to make that change in your life, you've got to also start listening to other people who are saying the things that matter.
Yeah.
I was following a lot of people or listening to a lot of people who were still kind of in the version of me that I was, which was making me upset. But then once I also started talking to my clients about aging, and then I started thinking about that. And then, I laughed. You'll get a kick out of this. I had a class one time where there was a guy who had had 2 knee replacements. He was there. The woman was going in for her knee replacement in, like, a month or something. Another woman had had ankle surgery, and she was rehabbing her ankle, and someone else had I said, "What is happening to all of you?" But then I said, "I'm so glad you're still at the gym. Like, you are
Yeah.
still here after your surgery, before your surgery, and everywhere in between," because especially breaking your ankle, having a knee replacement, not everybody comes back from that. They
No.
look at that and they're like, "I'm toast. That's it. It's done. It's over."
Right.
And I'm so happy that they're coming back. That's so important.
Right. And I have this whole big 5 C's that I kind of walk through. And the second C is the courage, right? Because it's like after you have an
Yeah.
injury, especially something like debilitating, like a knee or a hip or something like that, it's kind of scared you a bit, right? So you have to have the
Mhm.
courage to try to do the things that you used to be able to do. The courage to say, what, I'm not feeling stable right now when I walk on said new joint, but it's going to come, and give yourself the patience that, you know, if I was 25 coming back from knee replacement, it would be, a few weeks versus maybe instead of 6 to 8 weeks, it might be 8 to 12 weeks, maybe 12 to 16
Yeah.
weeks. And that's okay.
Right.
Right? At
Yep.
least you're coming back. And I have a newer client, and she had like a major medical illness, and she's like still like trying to like get back, and I'm like, girlfriend, like
Yeah.
6 months ago, this wasn't even what you would have thought you where you'd be. So give yourself that grace that like some people in that situation don't come back, and
That's
you're
right.
and because you were healthy, you were fit, you were able to kind of leapfrog over them. And now, now you're just kind of now chasing like what you were able to do. And maybe you'll get back there. I don't know. But be like confident that like you're well past everyone else who had a very, very similar situation than you.
Mhm. Mhm. Agree.
So now you talk about when you work with clients, it's more about like shifting behavior change. And
Yeah.
so, and as we've just been talking about, it is a lot of like it's my identity. It's who I do, like who I do. I speak English. It's a what I it's what I do. So it's kind of like, you had your routine, like you woke up and you did A, B, and C, and you did and so forth. And now, it for a lot of people, it's kind of like, how do you kind of rewire this is what I do now? How do you kind of start people shifting those kind of small, behavior change, whether I'm trying to break something or start something?
Mhm. A lot of it is that curiosity. I ask them to be curious about their own life. And
Mm,
can you do this? I ask a lot of rhetorical questions. Can you walk for 5 minutes around the block? That's one thing
mm,
to use a practical example for myself, especially sort of in that like post COVID lockdown, and some people are back, some people aren't. I was feeling
yep.
really trapped at home and pretty lonely. And I thought, why do you not just go outside your door and walk around the block? Like this is such a simple thing, but it was so challenging for me too. But once I got in that habit of like, okay, just go outside in the morning, walk around the block, I thought this is such a great, and I actually do a talk about this called Go for a Walk in Your Pajamas, because I go in my pajamas, like my shorts and ratty t-shirt. I don't care because if I have to get dressed, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And so out the door I go. regardless. And I had a client one time, this was so pivotal for me and her, and that's where the name of this talk came from. But I said to her, "What gets in the way for you in the morning?" "Oh," she says, "my husband, my kids, my email, getting dressed, all this pressure." It's that major pressure that I think we all have, like it has to be like this. And
Yes.
I said to her verbatim, "Can you just go for a walk in your pajamas?" She looked at me like, "Are you being for real?" I said, "I'm being serious. Because if you wake up and you walk right out that door, your husband can't find you. I mean, they can, but like you just
Right.
out the door you go. You don't even have time to change your clothes. You just go." And so that's how I talk to clients a lot anymore. Is I'm like, what is the smallest thing you can do? And that's the hardest because they don't want to make small changes. They
Yes.
want their life to change by tomorrow. Like, I'll just wake up and be a new person. And I'm like, that's not going to work. It's just not.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, everyone wants to make like, Kim, give me the list, right? Like, give me the 500 things, give me the manual. And I was like, when I first started coaching, yeah, I gave you the whole damn manual. And then you would be
Okay.
on page 500 and you'd be like, I really can't do that. And I'm like, but what about number one? Can you take step one? And, if it is that 15-minute walk, they're like, yeah, I can easily do that 15-minute walk. What's next? And you're like, show it to me for a week. Right.
That's right.
And
Uh-huh.
it's in our heads. It's like we have to do 500 things. Like it has to be hard, it has to be complicated, or it doesn't count. And I want to meet this invisible judge, like this invisible judge
Right?
who is giving you this edict that like if you're not doing all the things, it's not going to work.
Mhm. Right, right. I said something the other day. Oh, I had a client start. Very cool. I was training the wife, and then she's like, "I really want my husband to start, but you know that dynamic. You can't force them."
Yep.
And so he actually finally agreed that he would come and do joint sessions with her. He made it clear to me though that he hated strength training still, and I said, "Okay, but you're here. That's great." But he asked me after the first session. He said, "Okay, what should I do in between before I see you next week?" And I said, nothing new. The biking and the yoga that you normally do. And he looked at me like he fully expected me to say, "Repeat this routine 3 more times at your house before I see you in 1 week." And I said, "You weren't even lifting weights before today." I said, "Once a week consistently is a huge improvement. I don't need you to add anything else right now. Do your
Right.
normal stuff and then come back next week." And even the next week he was like, "I still can't believe you said that." Could not comprehend that I wasn't asking him to change his life dramatically in 1 week.
Right. And then it's like people get upset when you only want to you only give them one change. And then I'm like, do it,
Right.
because what the number one thing that you probably hear that I hear is that I'm like, okay, what keeps you, what kept you from doing whatever? I'm just not being consistent. And when I might ask you like, okay, what kept you from being consistent? And then life got in the way. And I'm like, so if we can start to find a way to like make it so easy that no matter how crazy life got, you could still make it happen. We take away that like excuse.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And they want I think people want I mean, myself included, right? You're like, I want to just fast forward. I want to do this and have this body and have this life and do that. And there's a lot of things involved. But what most people don't get is that it's actually small things. It's taking that 15-minute walk every single day. It's going to bed 10 minutes earlier, but every single day.
Right.
It's having one salad frequently, it all does add up, but it's not exciting. You're not like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a different person in 1 month." No, and the more I learn too about behavior change and the more I work with clients, I am just very honest. I say things they don't wanna hear. I say, "It's not going to
Yes.
happen in a month." That's
Yes.
period, end. It's just not. And then they look at me and I'm like, "Do you still wanna have this conversation?"
Yeah, no, and I guess I always say to people, I'm like, look, I said, I can give you the runaround, or we can cut to the chase. And I'm like, I would rather cut to the chase so that I set expectations now, so that you're not asking me every week when. And a lot of I also say that a lot of the results that you're going to see from me aren't going to be on that scale. You might
Mhm.
not even see it in your clothing. I said, but if you're sleeping better, your digestion's better, you're pooping, you feel more energetic. I'm like, that's working. Like we're trying to unpack decades of the beating the shit out of your body, which is a challenge. And your body is still going to probably still be in the corner, like waiting for the beat down to come.
Mhm. Mhm. Can we talk about food and fat loss? Is that a topic we
Oh
can
yeah,
dive
sure, sure.
into?
Sure, sure.
Honestly, outside of exercise, which is what we've been talking about a lot, changing my and I know you wrote me after you listened to my episode about Snackwell's cookies, but
Yes.
changing my relationship with food as I have gotten over 40 has been probably the biggest change for
Huge.
me. Huge. And I think if I want there to be something people can take away from this is that changing your relationship with food, especially if you are growing up in the 80s, 90s where it's all skinny, skinny, fat-free everything, it was so damaging. And I just decided too that I didn't want to be obsessed with food for the rest of my life. I didn't want to restrict highly for the rest of my life. I wanted to have a better relationship and a relationship with food. Like I'm also too old to not eat things that I want to eat. Like I want to both enjoy my food. I want to be able to I had to realize that I cannot eat like I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. Like this is also just a thing that's true. My body is just not I'm not exercising like I was. And so instead of being upset, which I was for a while, like why can't I eat like I used to? I got curious. How many calories can I have? What happens to
Yes.
my body when I eat this? And that it takes forever. The other podcast I think you listened to, as I was like, it took me 2 years to lose 5 pounds.
Yep.
Again, people don't wanna wait that long. They don't wanna wait.
No.
But I learned so much in that 2 years that I wouldn't have learned. And, there's a lot to say there, but I just think it's important that you also have to work on your relationship with your food.
Yeah, so let's like rerun that because yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about exercise because as we grew up into the fitness world, we were told that was the only way to change your body. Go to the gym,
Yep.
beat shit out of yourself, and that's how it was going to be. There's still, again, like you said, on a certain corner of the internet, I'm going to find that if I ate 10 Doritos, I'm going to do 10,000 burpees. If I ate
Right.
20 of this, I should be doing this, running a half mile. That's bullshit, right? I wish there was a
Yep.
calculator in my body that said, for all the badness I did, go for it. But that's not how it works. It'll make my job so much
Mhm.
easier. However, like you said, we've got look at I'm gonna call it brain damage. I'm going there. We've got such
Yep.
brain damage from the Snackwell cookies. So she did a podcast on Snackwell cookies. I was the Snackwell cookie whore. I just would like if I could eat a whole pack because it didn't have any fat in it. So and this is before all of us got educated on reading the label, and I hope you're educated on reading the label. But we were also became food obsessed, right? So it was like, oh my God, does this have carbs in it? Does this have gluten in it? Does this have this? Does this have this? And we've become so like pull from our diet that we never have
Yeah.
asked ourselves the question, does this food make me feel good? And I could be the
Mhm.
healthiest food on the planet, but if I eat eggs, I feel bloated. And guess what?
Mhm.
I don't eat eggs, and it's
Right.
okay. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't work in my body. For some people, it's kind of like before everyone went gluten free, like celiac. If gluten didn't feel good in your body, you got itchy, you got scratchy. Don't frickin' eat it.
Exactly. Yes. And also, eh, I think there's an extreme between, diet culture, what we're just talking about over here, very extreme diets we've done and foods you can or can't eat. And then I believe on the very other side, there was a period of time where body positivity was very strong in the sense of, oh, you shouldn't want to change your body.
Yeah.
You should just love it the way it is. And it just is the way it is. And that's what you're going to have. And that both ends are quite damaging, in my opinion, because you have body autonomy. If you want to change your body, it is up to you.
Mm,
What changed for me was that I no longer wanted to change my body as a way to control my life, which I think
Yes.
was I was gonna say earlier was whenever I was stressed earlier in my life, I was like, "I have to change my body," and then
Yes.
I could because I was young. And now I'm like, I don't wanna change I can't use this to change my body, and also, like, that doesn't seem right either, but I do wanna change my body, but it takes a different method. And you find yourself in this middle ground of like, okay, I need to learn what my body likes. I want to eat
Yes.
foods that I like. How do I do this? And you have to be curious, or you're
Right.
just going to be in the same hole.
And it's also being curious about experimentation of that
Mm.
there might not I might be, making a right turn here, and I don't know if it's going to get me the results that I want, but I know on this road right here, I'm not getting what I want. And so be willing that this right turn might not be the right turn, and I might need to make another turn this way or another
Mhm.
turn that way. And it's, as you mentioned, and one of the things that I connected with you is that you're like, it took me 2 years. And I remember this was probably about maybe a year ago. This woman, she wasn't in the health and fitness industry at all. I don't even know how she showed up on my feed. And
The internet.
the internet, yeah. She was like, I feel like she was like a news reporter, like some like completely like nothing to do with fitness. And she talked about how she was just had a baby and she was, just trying to, be a mom, trying to understand her body. And it took her 2 years to lose the weight. And I was like, interesting. So then, of course, that kind of stuck in my mind. I was like, all right, that's interesting. And so then you start going down a rabbit hole, and then I found
Yep.
several other people, and now fitness people, like especially over 40. It's like there's so many variables that are going on in our bodies that it's not as predictable as like 6 weeks to tighter up. Like that ship is like so far out to sea. I can't even see the lights.
Yep.
However, if you're willing to give yourself, and I always, now my new, if you work with me one on one, it's 6 months. Like we are working
Yep.
together 6 months because I know that I have to deprogram you, and it's going to take me
Yep.
a good 6 to 12 weeks to deprogram you. And so by the time we
Mhm.
start to get to the meat of it, it's
Yeah.
12 to 13 weeks. And now we got some training
Mhm.
wheels underneath you to start to see some changes. And if you're willing to go another 6 months, we're going to do another thing to like just other decode what we've already done to truly get to like
Yep.
you being like a beginner again and
Mhm.
understand what your body needs versus I've always eaten this way and this is how I eat and this is when I do it and this is it versus like sometimes I got to blow up your world.
Yep. That's right. And I had to come to terms with some truths about my body. And I have to give credit where credit is due. So I follow a woman named Ashley Pardo on Instagram,
Oh yeah, I
and
know
she,
actually.
yeah, talks about some things that really helped me, which was, maybe you're just a person who gains weight easily. Like that's
Hmm.
just a fact. And if you can say it's a fact, then you have to just stop arguing it. And I looked at my genetics and I said, it's a fact. Like, it's just a fact. And so I can fight it or I can acknowledge it and go, now what should I do about it? And I
Right.
fought it for a long time because I was like, no, I've been able to manage my weight. And then I was like, but I was also over exercising. So now I'm a 40-year-old with a body who probably gains weight pretty easily. I can keep gaining weight and be mad, or I can look at that fact about myself and say, okay, what do I want to do about it?
Right.
Sometimes I don't wanna do anything. I want to eat the food I wanna eat, and that's a decision that I make. And other days I'm learning to I think I'd like to figure out how my body can stay at a manageable weight and what that's gonna take from me. And some days I do it great and other days I don't. And that's okay. But the fact is, I have a body that gains weight easily.
It's funny that, and I say that because it's like you know, clients who are like, I don't want to be the girl who like shows up with the jug of water and the bag of apples at a party. And I was like, I don't want you to be that girl either. However, you have to decide that if that's how you don't want to be, that's okay. but you can't step on the scale the next day and get mad. And I was
Mhm.
like, because
Right.
most of the women who come to me, they're not at the point where they're eating like assholes when they go out to a social event. It's like they go out and they have the piece of cake, or they have the glass of wine with their sweetie, and they have a fun meal. But it's like you have to kind of like know that it's okay if you have that one night out. If this is an every night occurrence, yeah, we're gonna have a
Right.
conversation. But I want 1 to 2 days a week, you need to release that valve, because how many of us have like kept the valve on so damn tight that when it blew, it was like Mount Vesuvius. And like if it wasn't nailed down, it was going in our mouth.
And honestly, it's when you say that about the valve, that's so true. The other thing that's been so meaningful for me in learning about myself is I just don't feel guilt or shame now. And it's
Yes.
incredible to me how much that impacted me. When I would eat ice cream, I would think about it for days. And I would
Right.
be like, okay, we gotta figure this out. And I'm gonna have to do this, 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 and this. And now I'm like, oh, that ice cream was so good. Okay, what's for dinner? I think I'll
And
have a vegetable.
right.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because it's like we give so much power to food, that it was the
Mhm.
food that tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Put me in your mouth." Like so much meaning. And when we just kind of say, "You know what? It's ice cream. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a I could have a half a cup of this. Put it back in the
Yeah.
freezer, and if I want more, I'll have more." But it's like
Mhm.
when we're eating in the dark, that's when it becomes this like dirty secret. And now it's so shameful that like you kind of feel like you have to have more. And it's like again, as we talked about the exercise part, I don't know when that light bulb switched for me, that it was like there's certain foods like I used to be like, I can't have that in the house. And it
Yeah.
took me
Right.
and it again, it was not a light switch. Like it wasn't like I'm doing it. It was like slowly I practiced with different foods and so forth, to the point that like I had a pint of ice cream in my house. I think I have a pint of ice cream in my freezer right now. That it was like I could have a couple of bites and put it back and
Yep.
forget about it. Not like it not be like needling in my brain.
Mhm. Well, I have an experience that was really pivotal for me. Have you ever had Costco sheet cake?
No, but people tell
The
me it's fabulous.
Oh, it's real good and it's a big cake, okay?
Yeah.
So we used to get one every year for my birthday. And I remember there was a time many, many years ago. It's so vivid. The room was dark. Funny you say that. It was before everybody woke up, and I got the cake out and I was shoveling it in my mouth fast without
Mhm.
thinking about it. And it was super compulsive. And I knew, I was like, that's not a great behavior.
Yep.
It was one of those moments, and that was probably over 10 years ago, so it's been a journey since then, but now I confidently know that I could have that same cake in my house, and I could cut a piece and be like, "That's good," and if I eat too much, I'll know because I now pay attention to how my body feels when I eat it, and I'll be like, "Ooh, that was 1 extra bite, now I feel a little sugar nauseous," and
Right.
then I'll just move on. But I beat myself up over that cake shoveling for a long time. The
Oh
guilt,
yeah.
the shame, the hiding, and again, I just didn't wanna live that way forever.
Yeah, completely. And it's like teaching people moderation is a challenge, because it's like we've been schooled A or B. Like there is no C. Like there is no all of the above. It's like you're either
Yeah,
having the cake or you're not having the cake. And we make meaning like, "Ugh, I'm horrible. I couldn't resist." Or like, why didn't
right.
you stop me? I'm like, it's like you're a grown ass woman.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the other thing is I'm like, you are actually in charge of your actions, and you chose that, and you can also choose this. And that accountability is really hard to step up and be like, okay, I am a grown up. I could make a different choice. And that's a very simplified way of saying it. There's so much in the background. I understand. And working with clients, there's a lot behind that. But at some point, you do have to say to yourself, okay, I can do this differently.
Yeah. And again, as we've been, it's been coming back. It's like curious to be like, okay, clearly if you're listening, if you made it this far into the podcast, clearly something's resonating here, right? So that's one. So now it's like, okay, can I be curious about giving myself a longer runway, like that it's not this 6 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever? Can I give myself that longer runway? Do I have the courage to say, it's okay if I don't go to the gym for this amount of time? Is it okay that, what, I go to the party, I decided to have one glass of wine. Have that one glass of wine and not feel pressured to have the second glass of wine or whatever it is that they might be having at a party. Like, think to yourself, like, can I start to, the best way I've always described it to my clients is, can we set up boundaries, right? There, we know that there's certain things we like and certain things that we don't like. And when it comes to like food, we're very socialized around food. And I know I have friends who are food pushers. Like, we all have those friends in those families. Just one more. You're not having my world famous whatever. And it's okay to have the bite of the world famous whatever just to like shut them up, but I don't have to eat the whole thing. And
Right.
it's those two things: being curious and having the courage that I'm going to do something different, and I don't
Yep.
see how.
That's right.
But I
Hmm.
know that the outcome I have right now, I hate. I'm not happy, and it's going to be slower than I want. It might not look the way I think it's going to look, but I got to be okay with that.
Well, and we could be here all day, but I want to give you this nugget too. I said to a client the other day, she kept using the word skinny. I've known her for a really, really, really long time.
Hmm.
And she has always said, I want to be skinny. I want to be like, that was the word. And so I said to her the other day, what do you think is going to happen in your life if you're skinny? Truly, like, what is going to happen? Like, you become skinny, then what? And she looked at me and was like, she had no answer. And she'd
Yeah,
also never really thought about it. Like, what do you think is going to happen? I said, maybe you'll feel good. Maybe you'll wear, like, but have you extended that out? Like, if I'm skinny now, then I'm going to wear an outfit that's going to make, like, what's the end of that story? And I
yeah,
think many people think there's a whole story that comes after I hit my body goal. But a lot of that story could happen now. I told her, "Go buy an outfit in a size that you don't really wanna buy, fine, but that you feel good and you like it." And
right,
I said, "Your size of your clothes is not on the outside.
right.
Only you know. You feel good in it, then you'll feel better." And it was such a fascinating conversation because she had really never thought, "Oh, does anything happen after I get skinny?" And for me, I thought the question, "If I never change my size, can I live the rest of my life?" And that was really helpful too, because I thought,
Yeah,
well, if I never lost a pound, I could like this life. I could work on fitness goals. I could be this way. So why am I so focused? You know, it's such a dynamic conversation that can be had around that topic.
yeah. I'm writing this down for my little intro to you.
Awesome.
But you're right. That's when we kind of talked about this a little bit ago about when I do this, I'm going to be happy. When, and we kind of
Mhm.
delay this happiness. And this was probably like, gosh, 10 years ago when I first started my business. The woman who was my business coach at the time, she said, "Okay, Kim, how do you define success?" And I like literally rattled off all of these like preludes, like when I make this and when I do this, when. And she's like, "Okay, that's great. Seriously, what?" How? Like, it was every textbook answer that I could give. And she goes, "All right, I'm gonna make you sit with that question." She's like, "You don't have to answer it today," but she goes, "In our next call," she's like, "I want you to sit and what does success mean for you?" And I think a lot of people, like when you ask that question, like, okay, when you get to a size 10, what happens?
Right. What happens actually?
And so I think, that's a great question to leave on this, right? It's like we talked about identity, which I think is one of the biggest reasons why we get stuck in our spiral is that
Mhm.
you were the endurance athlete. I was a fitness competitor. Who am I if I'm not that? And we had to
Yep.
figure that out. Then the question is like, we had to get curious. We had to be like, okay, if I am not that person, who am I? But
Yep.
also, what was I really running away from? Like, was I using this as
Uh-huh.
something else? Right. And, that's kind of like the shit we don't really like. That's the shit you stuff under the bed and you hope no one ever comes
Right.
over and lifts the comforter. And then
Yep.
finally, it's like having the courage to be like, you know what? This might take longer. It's not probably not going to look the way I think it's going to look. And what happens when I get there? Like, is there going to
Yep.
be a parade? I mean, I'm still waiting for my parade. Like, I'm looking out the window right
Same.
now. There's no
Same.
parade that's
Nope.
going to come marching in front of my street that or that invisible judge that I've have in my brain being like, girlfriend, you won the weight
Uh-huh.
loss Olympics.
That's right. That's right.
Here's your Mercedes. That's not that is not coming. But this has
No,
been
no.
such a great conversation, and I'm hoping that all of you have taken away at least one thing. And again, if you've made it this far, you're freaking curious. So I
Mhm.
asked Lindsey, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, great. Instagram, you can find me at Lindsey Heiserman Coaching. That's probably the best way. I also tend to have a little bit of fun on LinkedIn. So I don't know if that's your social platform, but you can just find me by my name, Lindsey Heiserman. And those are two great places.
Awesome. And so, Lindsey, I always ask everyone, what's one thing that makes you feel magical?
You prepped me for this, and then we got so deep into this conversation that I didn't even think about what makes me feel magical. You know, th- I feel pretty magical when I drink a cup of coffee quietly and slowly in the morning. And I love coffee, but what it represents is that I've created a life in which I can drink coffee slowly in the morning and I
Mm.
can go for that little walk real quick around the block. And that kind of like everyday magic, I think is really powerful.
I love that. Like, I always tell people like my favorite thing is I have slow mornings. And, you were a personal trainer.
Mm,
We never had slow mornings. It was like get up,
nope.
run out the door with everything you had. And I now value like slow mornings. And as we talked about before the call, like this was not a slow morning. It was like hit the ground running. And so I really like enjoy a nice slow morning. So yeah, I'm
Same
with you
here.
on that. I'm right there with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you follow Lindsey. And if there was any takeaways that you got from this, screenshot this episode and please be sure to tag Lindsey or myself and just let us know what your takeaway was from this show. All right, Lindsey, thank you so much for taking your time out today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.